with coffee. Welcome, Merla and team. Over to you guys. Hi.
Kia ora, thank you for having us this afternoon. I'm Justine Haves from Community Services and have my colleagues Merla and Rob Cairns with me today to talk to you about the Community Facilities Network Plan. Move the mic. Revised Action Plan for 2019. So our report today is presenting the revised action plan for your consideration, as the action plan is a companion document for the Community Facilities Network Plan. We will touch on the objectives of that plan first. We will then update on progress since the last update that was provided for you in March 2017 and summarise the proposed plan for delivery, and then we'd like to talk specifically about the Central Library. So the Community Facilities Network Plan was adopted in 2015 by the Regional Strategy and Policy Committee. The plan ensures our investment in our community facilities maximises the benefits that we can deliver across our network. It identifies three key drivers, which the first one, ensuring our existing facilities are fit for purpose. So that really demonstrates our commitment to our existing assets. The other two drivers identify that addressing gaps or duplication in provision and meeting needs are an important aspect of our investment, and meeting future demand arising from population growth and our changing user expectations within our communities. So the scope of the plan itself covers arts and culture facilities, libraries, pools and leisure, community centres and venues for hire, which includes community or rural halls. And the Community Facilities Network Plan has the companion action plan. The action plan itself identifies actions and assesses priorities for delivery across our network. It identifies three different categories of actions: strategic improvements, business improvements, and area-based actions. And the area-based actions recognise the local board that they relate to. So today we're presenting a revised action plan for your consideration, and that's attachment B of the report. The revised action plan is split into two parts. So part A identifies the proposed actions for delivery during the next 3 years, and part B provides a status update on the actions identified in the original 2015 action plan. And that's a follow-on from the last update you received in 2017. So the action plan is based on the three criteria that the Community Facilities Network Plan identifies for potential actions. Those are fit for purpose or performance issues relating to our existing assets, and that's based on our commitment to maintain our existing network. Provision gaps, duplication and population change relating to potential new provision. And external catalysts or opportunities that recognise that the activity of others can present an opportunity for us to align and deliver together. So opportunities to create additional capacity for us to take advantage of. So once potential actions are identified, a number of factors are considered in determining the priority of those actions. And this table here demonstrates those criteria. So they're basically broken down into three categories. The network level helps us understand the performance of our service assets in relation to each other, where they are and where they need to be. The community level category recognises the local board priority, and you'll note that's the highest overall weighting in terms of our criteria. and assesses the local scale and impact of those potential actions. And the building level acknowledges that condition and design are important to understand for our existing assets. So in determining the priority or applying these criteria to the potential actions, we've used information from direction setting from the long-term plan 2018 to 28. We've also referred to local board plans and department work programs to inform that prioritisation. So in terms of progress since we last reported to you in 2017, we're pleased to say that significant progress has been made since the plan was adopted. The prioritisation of these actions ensures that our focus and resource is applied to these areas, and you'll see that that's demonstrated in the progress made on both the priority area-based actions in the table here and on the strategic improvements. So we're committed to making sure that we allocate our resource according to where we can have most impact. So in terms of a few significant projects that have been completed since the last update in 2017, the Facility Partnership Policy was adopted in December 2018 to ensure that we're more effective in our delivery with partners, and implementation planning is now underway for that policy. An indicative business case was prepared and successfully secured funding through the 2018 to 28 long-term plan for the multi-purpose community centre and library in Avondale, and a new aquatic facility for the Central West. And Te Manawa, the new multi-purpose library and community centre in Westgate, Massey, opened at the end of March, and the official public opening, of course, was on Saturday. In addition, we have opened the Albany Stadium pool, which is an example of investment to meet a provision gap in our network of aquatic facilities, and that opened in 2017. And Ellen Melville Hall is another example of refurbishment of an existing community asset for both current and future use. So in terms of the content of the revised action plan that we are presenting for your consideration today, I guess it's acknowledging that while we're making great progress, our network is extensive and ongoing effort is required to continue to improve our network for communities. The table on the left in this slide summarises the content of Attachment B, Part A. So that is the prioritised actions for delivery during 2019 to 2021. In preparation for consideration through the next long-term plan cycle. 37 actions are being carried over from the 2015 action plan, and an additional 17 new actions have been identified as part of this process. So the chart on the right demonstrates the drivers that are associated with each of the actions that have been identified. And this chart shows that our results reflect our recognition that our existing assets and network are a priority, and that's shown through the red category there, which is the largest driver for our actions in the plan relating to fit-for-purpose community assets. So while there is good progress being made on planning for the community facility network, we'd like to draw your attention to the priority action for the Central Library, and I will hand over now to Merla to cover this aspect.
Kia ora koutou. A number of issues exist with the building. Unfortunately, water ingress is an ongoing challenge. The roof is particularly complex in design, and which means that repairs are not effective or straightforward. The building was designed in 1964 and delivered the first half in the early 70s, and then it had significant refurbishment in 1998. Since then, the customer areas have been refreshed, but in the meanwhile, the building fabric has aged and deteriorated. So this initiative to investigate the long-term future of this building was proposed through the long-term plan, but it was not prioritised. And since then, ongoing and reoccurring issues within the building highlight the need for a deeper understanding and identification of investment solutions. So we need to ask the questions about the future of the building. The renewals budget required to address the issues is likely to be significant, and that's why we bring it to you to consider for reprioritising. It presents an opportunity to understand current and future needs and to ensure investment can deliver on both in both an efficient and effective manner. So key operating areas of the building are at risk, such as the conservation area and special collections. The pipe work is getting close to 50 years old. The basement tanking has got a limited life. As well as that, the building's now starting to present challenges, and there are lots of lost opportunities in terms of showcasing the taonga and exhibitions, and the basement access for the public is problematic due to health and safety reasons. This image here shows the collection storage area currently for the Sir George Grey Special Collections. This houses things like the Greenpeace and Mercury Theatre and Theatre corporate archives and significant archives of New Zealand writers. It's currently covered with plastic sheeting to protect it from further and potential leaks and flooding. The area is one in the building designed to have climate control and protect our heritage items. So this is the sort of challenges that we share with community facilities in order to keep the building operational. The request for 420,000 operational funding is needed because there's no capacity within our baseline departmental budgets to progress this action. Community services, community facilities, and community and social policy will work together, the three departments, on this action, and it requires specialist technical expertise. The investigation will provide the information required to consider investment in Tāmaki Pātaka Corridor, the Central City Library, as part of the 21 to 31 long-term plan. So this is really doing some work to start to inform the next LTP.
And so just to close, I guess, in terms of, sorry about that, to close in terms of next steps, depending on the outcome of this afternoon, our proposal is to provide a memo on the revised 2019 action plan for all local boards, and then to publish that action plan, and then on the basis of the priorities proposed within that action plan to confirm work programs across the departments accordingly.
So we just, before we go to questions, I am going to move an extension of time for 30 minutes. Wayne's happy to second that. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against? Carried. So, it was. Hang on, I'll just. Let's just get ourselves sorted out. So Wayne just seconded the extension of time, so we're done. And I just need to clarify what we're doing is so can I just have a look? Have we got the new Chairs Recs here? Okay, so we're just going to split the recommendations just for clarity, and we're splitting the B that we've got just because people are a little bit concerned about what seemed to be a slightly odd process, that we were going to endorse the Central Library priority and then send it to Finance for consideration. So we're going to split it into two. We've got a B, which I'll get typed up in a minute, that we endorse the Central Library priority action for investigation and development of a business case. And then C, refer to Finance and Performance Committee the request for operational funding of $420,000 for the 2019-20 year that will be considered as part of the annual plan budget in the 1920 process. So just to explain that we're splitting those out. So we'll just get that printed up before we quickly rush to move recommendations. So just if there are any questions, I do realise, and I apologise to the staff, we've just ended up having a very long day that we didn't quite expect. So we'll just need to make sure our heads are straight as we work through this one. So questions. Councillor Walker, a question? Or were you just happy to move? Okay, so just questions. Councillor, there was another, was it Councillor Casey, a question? Darby and Cooper.
Is it the future of the whole building, or is it a progressive upgrading of the facilities that are running down? I'm not quite clear, because I heard you say the future of the building as well as this.
Yeah, so through the chair, we want to do, because of the importance of that building, both in our network and to the city, we want to do a thorough investigation of that building's future, in terms of the fact that the nature of it. It was built, many years ago. We've got plumbing that's inside walls that is very old, for example. So we need to do a thorough investigation of the future of that building. We don't have a view on whether it can be redeveloped in its current form, or whether we would need to take another approach. We genuinely don't know. But right now, we know that, for example, the tanking in the basement, so that's what keeps it dry, has only about a 5-year life. That's a significant challenge when we've got a basement full of items. So we need to do an investigation on what the future of that building is.
So you might come back to tell us, and I'm not sure what the time frame for that investigation is, but you might be coming back to tell us that there is no future for the Central Library. You don't know that yet.
We will come back with options. We don't know.
When are you coming back with those options?
It would take, what do you think, a couple of years?
Yeah.
August
2020.
August 2020.
Yeah.
This is a significant piece of work. Yeah, so we're just at the very beginning of a journey.
Meantime,
in time for the LTP.
Meantime, if you have more disasters in the library, that money is for the business case and investigation, not for doing the actual works.
Absolutely, the renewals is a separate issue, and we do need to deal immediately with the roof, regardless, because even if there was a decision made about the future of the building, any building of this scale and import would take decades, possibly, years, possibly decades to change. Yep.
So you will. It's business as usual until we get to the end of the process. And is that that figure of 420,000? How did you come to that figure?
So do you want to speak to that?
Through the chair. So the 420,000 covers, I suppose, two elements. One is, so it's all for external specialist and technical advice. The contracts themselves will be managed by staff resource, but the 420,000 covers the inputs we need, both from an asset perspective and from a service perspective, to develop those options and bring those back for your consideration. So that could involve, for example, some engagement with the community, some understanding from our stakeholders of the service requirements that we will have in the future, but also the technical information required from the building perspective in order that we can bring back that holistic advice.
Okay. Councillor Darby.
Thanks, Chair. Just questions on attachment B, page 45, 13, under new strategic improvements. Does that include investigation of the joint delivery, say the education sector, a school or schools, co-delivering aquatic facilities with council? I know this looking at the relative performance of different operating models. My question was, does it cover shared access and shared development of aquatic facilities?
Oh, sorry, through the chair, can I just clarify which specific item that you're referring to on page 45?
It's 13, attachment B. It's in that second block, middle of the second block.
Thank you.
Yeah, you got it.
Thank you for clarification. So yes, our investigations into any investment options now by default consider how we can maximise council's investment, which starts with an understanding of the provision of others, but also then builds on a picture of how we can partner effectively for delivery. So we recognise that we can't do these things by ourselves and that those relationships are really important in terms of building that capacity.
That's really good. Is that repeated over at 120 on page 50 under business improvements? Is that a repeat, or is how different is that?
So through the chair, the reason that's a business improvement initiative because it's more around what our operating practice looks like at the facilities themselves. So rather than how do we assess and frame the investment required across our network, 120 is more based on how we're making sure we're getting the best outcomes we can from our existing facilities through our operation.
Okay, good clarification. And go to page 46, and it's item 30. Mary Thomas Centre, Takapuna Community Services Centre, etc. Investigate opportunities to improve service delivery at those places. Mm-hmm. I understand at the Devonport Takapuna Local Board there's some consideration of so-called optimisation of those assets, that is, selling them and transferring the capital values to another site. Have you got a formal confirmation of that?
So through the chair, a member of my team is working with Panuku on that with the local board. So we had a workshop with them recently and we're going back to prepare for a formal report to confirm the scope of that investigation and get their resolution on that.
To get the resolution. Yeah. Okay, that'd be good.
So just to note, the driver there where it has opportunity, that's recognising that the Unlock Takapuna program gives us that opportunity to align our program together. Okay,
fantastic. One last one, 32, and that's on page 48. Down the bottom, it's another Devonport Takapuna Local Board one. Is that not a community centre as opposed to a library, that proposal? I know it's not, it's a non-priority action, but I thought that was a community centre, not a library.
So again, through the chair, that action is identifying that actually library and community centre provision needs to be addressed across that area. Okay, so it's all encompassing.
Thanks so much. Thanks, Chair.
No, I think I had my questions answered.
Community facility network plan. So I'm making the assumption that we're looking at buildings basically, and those buildings can be libraries, they can be indoor courts, and so on. So what follows is there's a close mesh between this and the non-building stuff, which is the fields, the netball courts, the other facilities that may not necessarily be indoors. So is there some sync between this project and that larger context as it goes to requirements for facilities? And that might be a yes.
So through the chair, yes, I guess, and I'd like to answer in two parts. One, that's why we're all here together, because community and social policy and community services have a large role to play in influencing and informing the work programs that are developed through community facilities, so that we can maximise that alignment of effort and investment between our community facilities and our other assets. This plan does specifically relate to the scope of the network plan itself, so that's why that's the content you're seeing today.
And I just wanted to make a comment now, Madam Chair, if that's appropriate, a fairly short one.
Okay, well, let's do questions and comments.
Okay, so make the comment. Okay, so over the summer period, I read the history of Auckland Library, put together by Wyn Colgan, who was a deputy librarian, and that was from the Genesis, according to the George Gray collection, and it was very instructive in terms of the changes that Auckland Library has had over a long period of time. And certainly what came across to me is that libraries change and things move on, and that the library has been through many changes. The prior library, of course, was the art gallery, and then prior to that, other locations. So it's very useful just to get a very long-term perspective on Auckland and where we've come from and where we're going. It's a wonderful institution.
Thank you, Madam Chair, through you. Thank you for this report. I just wanted to know, where you have two facilities in the same box, say for instance on page 56, number 71, you've got library, Panmure and GI library in one box. Does that mean that your investigation could show up that one of them goes? Because people are emotionally tied to libraries. This is election year. I don't want to approve anything that could look like we lose a library in my area. Thank you.
So through the chair, you'll note that the status of that action is underway. So members of our teams are working on that at the moment with the Mangekiki Tamaki local board. And the research, it's just being workshopped with the board today actually, but the research is really clearly telling us the values and the differences of those two facilities in Panmure and in Glen Innes and how they are used in different ways by those communities. So that's part of how our research starts, is by trying to understand the current delivery, the current outcomes and impacts, and make sure that any options we explore really reference those findings. So we don't go in with any preconceived ideas. That's the purpose of the investigations, is to understand that evidence and then develop options accordingly.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. No, it's available right now.
Thank you, Madam Chair. The general thrust is good, and it's good to have overview. I'm concerned a little bit just about general renewals and making sure we have a constant good overview, and also ways to, when we're going for a renewal and it's maybe one or two items and then we investigate and it needs a wider work, it seems to be a gap between, oh, we've got the money for the renewal we planned for, but actually we need wider work, and there kind of isn't that space. So that's one concern. And then I can ask after if you've got an answer for that.
So I can just talk generally about renewals budget. So clearly, I'm sure you're all aware we are in a constrained budget envelope for our renewals program. That at the moment those budgets are allocated to local boards, and then the decision making on priorities within those budget envelopes are local board decisions. So when we are looking at a building and we uncover things that we weren't expecting and the cost increases, the discussion then needs to become one about where that board's priorities lie. If we need additional money for that project, it needs to come from somewhere else. So it's a discussion with those decision makers.
It's just around specifics. So on the Kaipatiki, sorry, I've lost it now. We've got the Marlborough Park Hall, and we led, when I was on the local board, obviously the look for youth provision, and then we changed the hall into a youth space. But this doesn't say that. This is, it says the investigation for provision is complete in 2017, but it doesn't actually say that now what it is and that it's fit for purpose. Like, if you read this, it seems like we're still looking for the possibility when it's actually been 2 years in use as a youth centre. So that's just one. And the other one, I think Northcote's fine because you've said that relates to Takapuna. So around the provision of facilities in Northcote, clearly there is going to be a hub of some kind, a new library of some kind. It kind of doesn't say it in here. So if I was an average person reading this, it might be kind of confusing, but I guess is the bit saying growth the bit that you're relating to the Panuku program work?
So to answer through the chair, yes, Northcote is another example like Takapuna where we are working with Panuku. I guess what we try to do through the development of this plan is focus on what we know about the services and the facilities that we have within the network that we're responsible for, And so, as I said, we seek that program alignment where those opportunities present themselves, but we also, I suppose, don't want to preempt the outcome without having done the work. So the Unlock Northcote program gives us that opportunity to progress this work and to really strengthen the alignment in terms of delivery.
So the Marlborough Park Hall one's a mistake then?
No, so that's acknowledging that that work has been completed. So you're right, there's the story there about what has resulted is not reflected within the current plan.
Okay, yeah. Okay, say Henderson Massey, the library, it says complete with the opening in 2019, but this one opened 2 years ago and it still says it's just been an investigation's complete. So I just want to make sure that it's like
It
in
is
there
complete.
as a youth centre. And the last, we can probably talk offline about it, but Uniportu Awhina is mentioned in there around growing that. We haven't had a contract with that group since North Shore City, and I don't exactly know where it's sitting, and there's been some issues there. So I want to know what that means by growth. It's also on education land, and there's issues with the greenway and things there. So to me, reading this, it looks like we're just going to grow the current provision where that's not what I think the local board has in mind as well. So it's just on paper, when groups see these things on an open agenda, it can be a bit confusing. But yeah.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Really just a couple of process issues I'm trying to get my head around. You've set out here 18 new strategic improvements, and you've set out 11 new area-based actions, which are network priority actions, and then you've got non-priority. The first thing is, at what point do you cost these things, and what understanding do you have of the size of the pool that you can draw on? Because I presume, you know, you could make a list as a mile long, but if you've only got, funding for a metre of that, you'd wonder why you were doing that exercise. So the first one is, how do you know what each of these projects are roughly going to cost? Do you know what pool you're drawing from? But the other question is, you've put in the recommendations separately, one of the of the large number of actions, which is the central library, and you've made that as a recommendation. Does that indicate that is your very top priority? If not, why have you singled out the central library over the other things?
Through the chair. So I guess question in two parts there. To answer your first question around our understanding of our capacity, so that is a good question, and it certainly is one of our challenges, but it's also why we approach any of these pieces of work with a very open mind. So, excuse me, through our investigations, we are intentionally considering all options and making sure that any ultimate recommendations that are either made to this committee or to local boards genuinely consider that value in terms of investment. And I think that is one of the benefits of this plan, is that, as we were talking about before, otherwise we're on a standard renewals path and we have constraints in that domain as well. So this gives us an opportunity to be a bit more open-minded and to consider alternatives. And as I mentioned earlier, that does include provision by others, and it does include partner opportunities as well. So we don't go into this, into these priority actions with an idea of what they could result in, because we genuinely are starting from the beginning of that analysis. But we are going very intentionally with an open mind. And I think the plan taking a network view ensures that we are considering those trade-offs across the items rather than just delivering items in isolation, so that those trade-off conversations that happen along the way are really important. With regards to the Central Library specifically, the reason that we are identifying that item independent, I suppose, of the others is that the rest of the investigations in the action plan are delivered using current staff, resource and departmental budgets. So the only reason that we're signalling this one by itself is because of the request for the additional resource we need to deliver this item. So it is a priority action alongside other priority actions, but we do believe it's an important one that we need to start looking at in preparation for the next long-term plan. we recognise that it could identify quite significant investment requirements and that the long-term plan is the appropriate place for those considerations to be given.
Sorry if I can just add to that question. Presumably you've got some idea of the parameters of what the remedial work would cost. Are you able to give us an indication of that? Because it might be in tens of millions or it might be in hundreds of millions, I'm not quite sure.
So what we do know at the moment is that the first priority is dealing with the weather tightness of the roof. We've got, having looked at a number of options there, we think the optimum option is replace the roof membranes. That's in the order of 7 million, and that's going to need to be done with some haste. So we'll be looking at next year, in the following year, and there is a challenge within our restricted renewals budget to find that sort of size of money for a single building, but that's something that we'll need to do just to keep the operation of the building. Within that, then there's a number of unknowns that are going to need some further investigation, and that's not always the easiest investigation. So Merla mentioned the basement tanking. So that's now 45, 50 years old. Within the basement, there's signs that it's failing locally with coming through the basement tanking wall. So there's going to be some quite extensive investigation to understand what's going on there, and really we just don't know what is required from that. So that's the kind of the big unknown. There are other, again, Merla mentioned some of the pipe work and the concrete walls. So there's lots of features of the building that are very hard to understand and quite technical to get a better handle on what's going on.
Okay, but the top priority, obviously, weatherproofing, roof, but about $7 million, not quite as dramatic as I thought it could have been. Thank you.
Councillor Casey, do you have another? Yeah?
On the Central Library, if the tanks go in the basement though, the money would be needed really quickly to fix that. I think my main concern is our special collections. I'm horrified. I was horrified by that slide that showed plastic sheets over it. And that's the one thing I haven't heard you say, that we've got customer access and we've got a fantastic service, but we've also got a priceless collection. And it shouldn't actually be in the same category as the other two, because you need to have everything that we say we're going to do. We don't have. We don't, and we need to make that for the future. So I think you said it might signify long-term investment. Absolutely, it will signify long-term investment if we want to have this collection kept in perpetuity. So just to underline that is,
and through the chair, you're right. In terms of the taonga in the Central Library, the building is the first line of defence, and that line of defence has been lacking in the last few years, and that was why we brought that's why we brought it earlier into the last LTP. The events of the last 18 months have told us we need to bring this investigation to you again, because we can't leave it any longer. So under my watch, I don't want a major disaster. And so that's why we're bringing this investigation to you.
I recommend that we do another visit to the Central Library, and this time, instead of looking at all the priceless artefacts and books, that we look at all the holes in the roof, and we look at where the water leaks in the basement and the plastic sheets over our taonga. That's what we should do before we get to the Finance Committee, because I think it'll be a salutary lesson for all of us.
Yeah. Very comfortable to organise that.
Thank you.
Just on that, I don't want to conflate a whole lot of other issues, but we are looking at the critical shortage of archives and storage, whether it's our museum, our art gallery or our libraries, and we are, as part of the cultural review, doing a bit of a look at the opportunities that may provide. And I think that's whilst we always look at the fabulous end of things, this is the unsexy, exactly as Councillor Casey says, this is the tough but critical end of things, and I'm really interested that we also wind that into part of the discussion.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Recognising that it's a legacy moment we're in terms of 2015 and the previous regime, and in your Māori impact statement, it's quite broad. But within the facilities and the network plan and your schedule, there's no council maraes included in any of the schedules as regional facilities. So therefore, they're not on any priorities. Is that correct? Now, I can name 9 of them. So I'm only talking council marae, I'm not talking mana whenua.
Kia ora koutou, Lisa Toka, Community Services. So the Community Facilities Network Plan scope includes council-owned facilities. So you've raised a really good point, but the scope does not include the not council-owned facilities. However, there has been some work done just recently for the Facility Partnership Plan, and also the council has got the Marae Development Fund, which brings to light or brings forward these important community and mana whenua facilities and matuaka facilities for consideration, but unfortunately the scope of this plan focuses on council's own facilities.
Maybe not here, Madam Chair, I refute that insofar as the 9 marae I'm thinking about are council owned on council land and council still got the title. So if you're saying that the definition of ownership is the user group on top of that land, then hand them the title. I'll believe you.
So for the actual network plan, it is the building and the land. So yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, but those would be more in the partnership space, or in other areas we would call them sport and community leases, but these are council-owned buildings on council land. Yeah.
Okay, but not a partnered or private marae building on council land.
Unfortunately, are outside the scope of the particular network plan as adopted, but the good news is that the network plan will be reviewed next financial year, I think it is. So these sorts of things can be built into that conversation and brought back if the scope is to widen to cover other key partnerships that we need to include in the scope.
If I may, Madam Chair, as a supplementary sort of point, that the definition needs to be revisited in the review, because I accept what's being said, and I'd accept if it's in the ambit of, say, local board. But you'd need to accept the definition needs to be reflected on, because, like I said, hand those groups the titles, and I'm right with you. Yeah. But as long as you're holding the titles, I'm sorry, I refute any suggestion that these facilities are not regional council-owned facilities, and they needed to be included from 2015. So if nothing else for today, some assurance that we can have a further conversation about that definition being revisited.
Absolutely.
Kia ora.
Kia ora.
Yeah, no, kia ora, Member Brown. I think that it's almost sort of dropped between two stools, really, and we need to decide either change the definition or treat it differently. Change the scope, sorry, or change the definition. So I think definite work to do there.
Thank you.
Okay. All people have signalled they wish to speak, I think, and we said we'd finish at 4. It's 2 minutes to. I think I'm going to put the recommendation. Everyone's okay? Good. I'll put that recommendation. All those no, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you very much. Thank you, team. It was quite a complex issue for people to get their heads around at the end of the day, but good work. Can I just take a second? First of all, I just do want to thank everyone today. It was a complicated day, and I think everyone did an amazing job, actually. Secondly, I just wondered if anyone cared about where the workshops have gone. The workshops have been moved. Tomorrow. I just thought there's no way that people wanted to spend another couple of hours workshopping, so we're going to do them in quick succession, boom, 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 on
The inclusive one is
do you
going
want
to be
to
a
quickly
memo.
hang on, guys.
Sorry, through the chair, the inclusive and diversity will become a memo.
Hang on, guys, can we just give my receipt?
The workshop that was the inclusive and diversity advice will become a memo, which will be sent out to everybody, and the Citizens Advice Bureau has now been moved to tomorrow afternoon at 3 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you. Again, with thanks to our staff and to all of you, I declare that, I'll just Declare the meeting closed. No, I'll quickly move that we receive the summary of environment and community. Seconded, someone over there. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Sorry, I had no idea. And can we just thank Maya? This is the last time we've got Maya. She's been seconded to the election side of things, and I just want to thank her hugely. The preparation for the handover of the petition this morning was supported and to a large degree facilitated by Maya, and I think she did a fantastic job. So kia ora and thank you. No, it's not. He says he's here. The next one, yeah. I checked with him. Thank you.